Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:06. Good morning. Thanks for joining us here on the 27th day of... No, 28th day. What day is it? It's the 28th day of December. You know, all these days just blend together here. It's
hard to keep track.
It's like the week between Christmas and New Year's is just one. It's all the same day. It's like one day. The sun
like
goes up and down a few times in the same day, but it's all the same day.
It's like we're the only ones working.
I know. It's because we are.
We're bitter.
All of our WMAL colleagues. Where are you? We're having a great time, though. Julie Gunlock and I keeping you busy and entertained and informed. And there's much to talk about coming up at 7:05. Terry Schilling, American Principles Project. 7:35, KT McFarland. And at 8:05, Gabriella Hoffman from Independent Women's Forum. Now, I'm Larry O'Connor. She's Julie Gunlock. Julie, yesterday in New York and Los Angeles, we had a series of protests, pro-Hamas, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic protesters celebrating terrorists, trying to keep Israel from defending herself. And to do so, they decided to shut down traffic on the way to two of the busiest airports in America, JFK in New York and here in Los Angeles, LAX. Here's what it sounded like.
Near LAX. Oh, what's going on down there right now?
Well, I can show you some of that backup that's been going on down there, and you can see actually where the closure is. Now, this is a protest, and this is what they were talking about, LAX PD and also LAPD down there in force. Now, this group right here, you can see they've been getting hold of the barricades. They've been getting hold of pretty much anything they can, and they're putting it out into the roadway, stopping traffic coming from in and out of LAX right here at Century Boulevard. Honestly, can't tell you what the protest is about, but you can see a number of them down there, and that's going to be LAPD. Now, LAXPD...
He can't tell you what it's about because he's in a helicopter, but we can tell you it has to do with supporting the Hamas terrorists, and the same thing happened in New York, as I mentioned. You heard him say, dragging anything they can to put in the street to block traffic. And LAPD has been mobilized, and they're on the scene. What do you mean on the scene? Grab them, handcuff them, throw them in a truck, and drive them to jail.
Yes.
And open up the road. That's your job.
Yes.
This happens in D.C. all the time, too, and it drives me nuts when people refer to it. Our police department refers to it as a First Amendment activity.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there is no possible way to exercise the First Amendment that then results in impeding my ability to drive on a road.
Yeah.
That is not a First Amendment activity.
It's incredibly dangerous. It impedes ambulances and other rescue vehicles. It is incredible. Also, it's just massively inconvenient for people. Yeah. And you don't have a right to do that. But yeah, this is terrible. And can we just take a moment and say traveling is stressful? You just did it yourself, Larry. It is stressful under any circumstances. And then to face this, it's just inhumane.
And I saw a bunch of people commenting on this, and people in my own family were commenting on it too. And the impulse is, well, I don't know what they're thinking. This is not going to make people more sympathetic to their cause if you just anger them. And I had to say to someone in my own family, wake up. They are not trying to win your hearts and minds. They are not trying to make you sympathetic to their cause. They're trying to terrify you because this is a terrorist act. I'm sorry. When you are blocking access to an international airport, that is an act of terror. And they should be treated as terrorists, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind because they dress like terrorists, they sound like terrorists, and they're actually protesting on behalf of terrorists. So let's just call this what it is. It drives me insane. And you mentioned I traveled myself yesterday. Yes, it is stressful. I flew in from Oklahoma. As we were heading to the airport, I even said to Meredith, I said, well, I wonder if we should leave early because, the road might be shut down with pro-Hamas terrorists. And she just started laughing. She goes, yeah, that ain't going to happen in Oklahoma. Right. And she's right. But ask yourself why. Why does this happen in New York and Los Angeles and not in Oklahoma? And it's because the government, through the people, by the way, who empower their government, the people of Oklahoma have told their government, yeah, we don't put up with this crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it happens in New York and Los Angeles because the people have allowed their government to put up with this crap.
You are absolutely right, though. This is about intimidation. They aren't trying to sway you or win your heart and mind. They are trying to intimidate not just regular people, but certainly Jewish people living in this country. And we've seen incredible acts of violence on the streets from the so-called pro-Palestinian protesters, pro-Hamas protesters. And you see what they do. It's always destruction, whether it's pulling down the posters of the kidnapped Israelis, children, babies, women, elderly, not to mention men. I always hate it when they have this list of people that have been taken hostage, but they never mention men. Like, they're free to go. But anyway, so they're always destroying things, intimidating people, scaring people. And you're right. It's on purpose.
Can we get to the gay couple having a meltdown at the
Oh,
airport?
please. It's so, it's...
Because the other major story out of airports yesterday, other than the terrorists who were shutting down traffic on the way to them, was this viral video of two men in a relationship, and I'm sure if they asked their local priest to bless them, they would get a blessing immediately. And apparently they got stressed out over some decisions made by an airline, as many of us do.
And we've all been there. It's
but their
stressful.
reaction was, but go ahead
like
and
a
take
parody.
You're not going to make a fight and see your girls. I'm good, Chef. Remember your girls. I'm good, Chef. You don't care about the girls? You don't care about the girls.
Hold on. Pause it here for a second. There's, I hate to put it this way, there seems to be, well, I mean, one of the men is trying to sort of be the voice of reason and talk down the other man who is just
the wife.
having a moment. All right, fine. But the man who's really losing it, honestly, this looks like a scene from Best in Show.
That is such a perfect, yes. And honestly, when I say the wife, the one who is trying to be calm is shorter,
right,
a little chubbier, right, and then the other guy is hulking. So it was, it is like a parody.
And that one, the one who's trying to talk him off the ledge, keeps saying, "Think of the girls, think of the girls." Well,
right.
There's been some investigative reporting here, because everyone's like, "Oh my God, they're parents of girls." They're talking about dogs. The girls in question here are their dogs, who they're trying to get home
Shelby and Dolly.
Oh, there. See, think about
Shelby
the girls.
and Dolly, and
All
one
right.
of them is a big poodle.
Let's wait. Are you talking about the couple or the dog?
No.
All right, let's get back to the poodle.
Girls? You don't care about the girls. You don't care about the girls. And then just hush. You don't care about the girls. Hello, everybody. Justin. American Airlines. It's over. Start. Here we go. Justin. Here. I'm not kidding. Don't. You don't care about the girls. So I want to tell you about Shelby and Dolly. Shelby and Dolly. Shelby and Dolly. Remember this. I'm gonna do it for you. Shelby and Dolly. That's it. Shelby and Dolly. Remember them. Shelby and Dolly, remember them.
I'm sorry. I do kind of feel bad. Because we're seeing people at the worst possible moment of their lives, and who wants that to be, blasted around?
It is,
and I think a glass of Chardonnay may have been involved.
I think
maybe
so.
a lemon drop, maybe a Cosmo,
maybe a Xanax is in order. But I will say, we've all been in this situation, but yet again, all I can think of is people who work at the airport have to deal with this all the time. I mean, this went viral, but this happens dozens of times a day where it does not go viral. You don't see it, but airport staff, which look, I have a big problem with TSA. A lot of those TSA people need to go through some manners training. I'm not saying it's But
this was at the gate, by the way.
This was at the gate, but I mean, I do feel like the airline employees really deal with a lot of terrible people who are just at the end of their tether.
The dramatic arms and shoulder action.
I know.
With
a little bit of Broadway
hands
going on.
Yeah, there was strutting. There was a lot, and a lot of people have done a deep dive in it because they're rather, part of me thinks this was they wanted to go viral because they seem to have a profile. No, who wants to go viral with this sort of thing? There are a lot of pictures of this couple. We know they're from Florida, so it's Florida man. Dustin Miller He was the one screaming with the arms flailing about. Dustin.
Yes. Dustin.
And this was at the Charlotte Douglas Airport, an airport I was just passing through, but I missed this scene, that's for sure. And who's the other one?
I don't know his name, but I do know their daughters are named Shelby and Dolly.
Yeah, Shelby and Dolly, which apparently are named after two characters from Steel Magnolias.
Oh, yes, of course. Shelby was the one with the kidney problems, and of course, Dolly Parton.
You know what? Some stereotypes.
I do love that movie.
Some stereotypes
Shelby.
have a certain basis in reality, I suppose. Anthony Thorne. Anthony Thorne is the other one of this couple. Yeah. And they were just having a bad day. And the video was pretty hilarious.
It really
and
is.
It's worth seeing. And that's all I have to say about that. It's 6:17. Let's get to Jamie Whitten in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
Oh, you had me at Best in Show, the movie. That's so funny.
Take up the girls.
The girls.
Politico magazine has a fascinating little tidbit here about the latest status of the war in Ukraine. This is written by Michael Hirsch. It hit yesterday, and I want to read one portion of it. The administration official told Politico magazine this week that much of this strategic shift to defense is aimed at shoring up Ukraine's position in any future negotiation. Now, that's a word we haven't heard much from the Biden administration with regard to the Ukraine war. In fact, this is about the time every year when more money is being funneled over to Ukraine, when we hear from President Zelensky and all of his pals at the Pentagon and at the State Department that Ukraine's about to embark on a new offensive that will take back the initiative. And this war has been in a stalemate since about the second week.
Yeah.
All right. But we keep hearing, well, there's a new offensive, and Ukraine's really got Russia on the run. And no, they haven't. Listen, I don't want Russia to prevail here, but you got to be realistic when you talk about what's going on the ground.
Larry, also now suddenly they're open to negotiations. I recall that many conservatives, if you mentioned a settlement, if you mentioned peace talks, if you mentioned this, you were suddenly some sort of puppet of Putin.
A propaganda tool
apparently
of
now
Moscow.
Politico is signaling that it's now okay to talk about this.
Yeah. No, in fact, it's worse than that. It's actually worse than that, Julie, because let me continue reading here. Quote, this is a quote of a White House official. That's been our theory of the case throughout. Oh. The only way this war ends ultimately is through negotiation. We want Ukraine to have the strongest hand possible when that comes. Oh, so now they're saying, it's always been our position that this is going to end with a negotiation. It's always been their position? No. All you've heard from them is this is over when Vladimir Putin is assassinated. This is over when there's regime change. Not only does Russia have to turn around and leave Ukraine and everything that it infringed upon 2 years ago, but they've got to leave Crimea that they infringed on back in 2013. That's what they've been saying, and now they're rewriting the books and saying, our theory of this case throughout has been the only way the war ends is through negotiation.
Yeah, also
go to hell.
Yes. Also notice that there's never any calls for a ceasefire in Ukraine, yet 7 minutes after October 7th, they were like, time for a ceasefire. Let's talk about this. But if you even hinted at the idea that maybe the Russians and the Ukrainians should sit down and talk about things, you were a Putin puppet. It's just ridiculous.
Great point. Yes, and how much time does the Biden administration spend publicly scolding and warning Zelensky? Well, just make sure you adhere to Geneva Convention rules and the proper way to conduct a war. It would be insulting, so they don't do it. But they do it to Benjamin Netanyahu on a daily basis.
And how many Hollywood stars have gone to see Benjamin Netanyahu? Meanwhile, there's a parade going to see Zelensky.
Jerry Seinfeld and Deborah Messing.
Well, of course, I love them, but
they didn't. Well, I don't always love Deborah Messing.
Well, I know.
But sure. It's we've got KT McFarland coming up in the program to talk about this and much more. It's 7:35. Right now, it's 6:23. We mentioned earlier, Julie Gunlock, that Joe Biden's Christmas message had no reference to Jesus Christ. which is about par for the course, I suppose, because he's a devout Catholic. Well, Pope Francis is also, I believe, a devout Catholic. And his message about Christmas did, in fact, mention Jesus. But then, in the same way, when politicians venture into religion, it doesn't always end well. Well, when religious figures venture into politics, it doesn't end well for them either. Here's his statement. To say yes to the Prince of Peace means saying no to war, to every war, to the very mindset of war, an aimless voyage, a defeat without victors, an inexcusable folly. To say no to war means saying no to weaponry. Now, he had me right up until that last line, because, of course, I think it is a Christian value to be opposed to war and threat. But to say no to weaponry, you've been to the Vatican, haven't you?
I have. Interesting.
It's well guarded by very well-armed Swiss Army guards.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of Swiss soldiers out of a job this morning.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, they're all armed. And so there's the sort of colorful Swiss soldiers that guard him. But there's also some men in dark suits.
Yes.
And dark glasses.
Yes.
That follow behind him.
And they
who
carry
frankly
weaponry.
Invoke a more serious, don't mess with me kind of attitude.
They carry weaponry. I mean, the guys in the big pantaloons also carry giant swords. You don't want to mess with them either. They know how to use them.
And I think there's stuff in those pantaloons, so I don't just think it's swords.
Well, thank you, Doctor.
Oh, no.
It took me like 15 seconds to find a picture of a guy dressed like a Special Forces Navy SEAL with the Pope Pontifical Seal emblem on him, carrying what looks like an assault weapon. Stop it. Come on, Pope, stay in your lane. It's 6:30. 6:36, it's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for joining us this Thursday morning. Coming up at 7:05, Terry Schilling of American Principles Project. 7:35, our pal KT McFarland. And then at 8:05, Gabriella Hoffman, Independent Women's Forum. I'm Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Julie, guess what?
What?
I know everyone's excited about Christmas, and it's still the Christmas season, and New Year's is coming up, but I have news for you. The Iowa caucus is January 15th. That is like 18 days away.
So weird.
The New Hampshire primary is January 23rd. That's a little over 3 weeks away. It's game on, baby.
It is.
And Nikki Haley, who I'm being told by the corporate media is now within striking distance of Donald Trump in New Hampshire. Okay. She had a town hall in the Granite State last night, and a curious exchange happened with a voter who wanted her to answer a question: what do you think was the cause of the Civil War? Now, before I let you hear her answer, let me just say, whenever I venture into this topic, and I've been here on WMAL I'm in my 13th year now, and I just want to let everyone know, I am a Yankee. I am from Michigan. I was born there. I grew up with monuments of young men who put on the uniform of the United States Army and fought for the Union side of the war. And maybe I was just indoctrinated with propaganda. But as a young boy growing up, learning my American history before George Soros took over our schools, it was rather self-evident that slavery was a major part of the Civil War.
Yeah, a little bit. Yep.
The only, because I'm going to get all the tweets, I'm going to get all the emails, educate yourself. There were a lot of reasons for the Civil War, and slavery was just one of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, nah, it's a pretty big one.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big one. And if you read the writings of, the leadership of the Confederate States of America, the president of the Confederate States, the vice president of the Confederate States, if you read what they wrote at the time, slavery was kind of important to them.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the young 18-year-old who put on the Confederate uniform to go die in a field was doing it because he owned slaves, because the vast majority of the people who actually died in the war didn't own slaves. That's kind of a tale of as old as time. The people who actually fight and die for wars don't end up being in the power structure that send those young men to war. If you want to talk about that, sure. But the actual cause of the war, I think it's fair to say slavery was a major issue, especially when you look at the contemporaneous notes of the people working behind the scenes trying to negotiate the end of the war And the one thing that the representatives of the Confederate States wanted was to retain slavery.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
oh, you want to end the war? Well, you're going to let us keep the slaves, right? No. Oh, well.
It seems pretty easy to answer there, Larry. Pretty
You would
easy
think.
question to answer.
This is also a woman who comes from South Carolina. And you would think, and listen, famously, she removed the Confederate battle flag.
That's right.
From the state capitol after the shooting that took place in the Charleston church, the racist shooting during the Obama administration. So with all of that background, let's listen to see how Nikki Haley, the only chance Republicans have against Joe Biden, I'm told.
Can I just say one thing before we play this?
Yes.
Also, it's an opportunity to say the Civil War was about when Republicans tried to free the slaves.
Thank you.
I mean, that's a great opportunity to say from racist Democrats who were in charge in the South.
Great.
Right? There's an opportunity here, right, to push that home that, you know,
That's right.
Republicans are on the side of freedom. And anyway, so go on.
Let's hear how Nikki did.
This did not happen. Right.
Tonight during a town hall for Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley. She was speaking at a town hall in Berlin when a voter asked her what she thought caused the Civil War. This was her response.
I think it always comes down to the role of government and what the rights of the people are. And I will always stand by the fact that I think government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never meant to be all things to all people. Government doesn't need to tell you how to live your life. They don't need to tell you what you can and can't do. They don't need to be a part of your life. They need to make sure that you have freedom.
The voter then asked why she didn't mention slavery in her response, to which Haley said, quote, "What do you want me to say about slavery?" The voter then said, "You've answered my question."
Ugh.
All right, so a couple of things here. You know, I think the most damning part of this entire thing is when she said, "What do you want me to say about slavery?"
Yeah, no, I know, and
because it plays into every stereotype of Nikki Haley, which I think, frankly, are legitimate stereotypes about
yes,
her.
I agree, and what resonated with me while listening to this is, did they pull some words that work, and tell her that when she gets kind of stuck, just say a lot of, role of government and freedom and say these words.
That's what Republicans like to hear.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God, you're right. It's got Kamala Harris word salad sort of vibe to it. Yeah.
But also, when you say that, it's the role of government and keeping the government limited so that people can have the freedom to what? Own slaves?
Yeah.
It was weird.
It made it sound like, well, the problem is that the government was trying to tell individual Americans
pushing
they
people
couldn't
around
own
and tell
slaves.
them to yes.
Right.
It didn't only strike me as sort of like she had no idea what she was talking about, but it was also sort of wrongly answered.
And for those of you who are like, well, listen, this is a trap, and they brought it up only to try to make Republicans look like they were squishy on slavery and they didn't want to offend people. It was like, okay, well, if it was a trap, she fell for it.
Right.
Okay, number one. And number two, let me explain, because this will be asked again, okay? Mm-hmm. So let me tell all the other Republicans running for president, and Nikki Haley, if she wants to listen as well, there is actually a way to pivot on a question like this.
There is.
Because you're right. There are a ton of Republican-based voters who actually, as I just said, they're listening to the show, and they will probably be mad at me for claiming that slavery, in fact, was a pretty important issue in the Civil War. That's fine. You want to pivot. You don't want to fall into the trap. Here's what you should say, Nikki Haley. You should say, you know what? Over 150 years ago, I'm here in New Hampshire where a lot of people died for the Union cause. I don't really think it's helping anyone right now to talk about what happened and brought us into the last Civil War. I'm more concerned about what's leading us into the next Civil War.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you something, there is a divide in this nation right now, and frankly, we're in the middle of a cold Civil War, and let's get a leader in the White House who will not make it a hot Civil War and a shooting Civil War. Yeah. Let's solve the problems that are in front of us right now. That's how you do it, Nick.
Right. And also, when you've reached a level that you're running for president and people are seriously considering you, you should be able to pivot like that.
Thank you.
And you think about other people like Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy, even Chris Christie probably could have answered that question with more skill It was amateur hour from her. This sounded like a sophomore debate team member who was stumbling and this is the most important thing, was trying so hard not to offend anyone that they made no point at all.
Right.
And people, they sense that. They sense that word salad.
No, that's why I said I think the most devastating part is, what do you want me to say about slavery?
Yes.
I'll say whatever it is you want me to say, right? Vivek Ramaswamy actually tweeted that out, the quote, "What do you want me to say about slavery?" and says, "Sounds like she's talking to her big super PAC donors." Yes. It's like, and that's the problem, Nikki Haley. But we'll see. Listen, there's 3 weeks to go for New Hampshire. We'll see if she can.
Well, we'll see if this changes Trump's tune. He seems pretty silent on when asked directly if he's going to choose her.
You think he's with her?
I'm not getting into that because I got a.
It's 6:45 WMAL traffic and weather. Every 10 minutes, first on the fives with Jamie Whitten in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center. Could we impeach Joe Biden? Could we get that as a New Year's resolution? Do you think the Republicans have that at least at the top 5 of their list?
Let's hope.
The latest reason to impeach Joe Biden goes well beyond the crimes and misdemeanors of his family and the bribery and the cover-up and the obstruction of justice and the Justice Department intrusion on a legitimate investigation into his son and his brother, into himself, by the way. It's an investigation into Joe Biden, not just his son. It goes well beyond that, and it goes well beyond his dereliction of duty with regard to the southern border. That's reason enough to impeach him. The fact that he doesn't do the basic constitutional job of providing for a common defense on our southern border. But the latest is that he continues to brag about the fact that he has defied a Supreme Court order calling his student loan repayment scheme unconstitutional. He was blocked. He was stopped in the Supreme Court from repaying or forgiving student debt loans. And he continues to brag about the fact that he's figured out a way to circumvent the Supreme Court and do it anyway. That is a direct violation of his constitutional duty and a direct violation of the judicial branch of our government.
Yeah, and the rules do not apply to the president, to President Biden. The rules don't apply to his son. The rules don't apply to his greater family. The rules just don't apply to him. So it's brazen. And look, ultimately he knows that the media will not call him out on this, and that means the voters are less likely to understand what's going on here. I mean, it's good to be a Democrat.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say. And this is probably the most blatant, though, because he continues to do a victory lap. And you're right. The media thinks it's wonderful because they're getting money out of it. I mean, you talk about corruption. You know, the reporters are directly benefiting from this because they made the wise decision to go to journalism school.
Yeah, but it's not just journalism school. Look at what happened with Claudine Gay. Okay, this woman was accused, it was sort of this well-known secret that she was a plagiarist, okay, that she was a fraud. She was a DEI plant, if you will. And the media it took, Chris Rufo and the Free Beacon to really expose, which of course now the New York Times and the Washington Post was like, by the way, our investigations have found that she plagiarized after all the work had been done from these more right of center outlets. Yes. So we know the media and these elitist universities and powerful government officials, it's just one big party.
It is. But that's why we're here. And that's why we draw attention to it. And by the way, and of course, our brilliant colleague, the great one, and there's a reason why they call him the great one, Mark Levin, who was on vacation. Mark Levin's on vacation last week and this week, but he's been tweeting more that he's been on vacation.
It's like
I think it's because he doesn't have his outlet to be on the air. I think, unlike Meredith, Julie clearly does not take Mark's phone away from him when he's supposed to be on vacation.
Julie Levin, not Julie Gunlock.
Yes, not Julie Gunlock, Julie Levin. I know.
Yes.
He gets the Julies mixed up sometimes. Mark Levin tweeted up this article about Joe Biden directly defying the Supreme Court decision that ruled his student loan forgiveness scheme unconstitutional. And in all capital letters, I love it when the great one tweets in all capital letters.
You can hear it.
Oh, you can absolutely hear it. And there's usually typos in there. So I'll tell you what Mark Levin tweeted out in all capital letters. Hello, House Republicans over here. This is an impeachable offense and it's low-hanging fruit. Are you out there? Are you paying attention? Get off my phone, you moron.
It's perfect.
That's what Mark Levin tweeted out in all capital letters about this. And he's right. And I mean, like, honestly, they should throw the kitchen sink at this guy in 2024. I love that James Comer has been meticulously putting together his case with Jim Jordan about the corruption and the bribery and the money, and that's all very important stuff. But you got the student loan thing. You got the border thing. Just go. You've got enough at this point. By the way, this is a good opportunity for me to let everybody know that I'm sitting in for Mark Levin tonight.
Oh, tonight?
That's how I know he's on vacation.
Oh, nice.
So if you're not getting enough of me this morning, just you start your day with me. Why not end your day with me?
Yeah, and there's time in there for a nap for you. I'm so glad.
Okay, if you say so. 6 p.m. tonight on WMAL. And tell all your friends and family wherever they live in the country, since it's nationwide. I'll be filling in for the great one, Mark Levin, tonight at 6 p.m. I will talk to you then. But in the meantime, we still have a couple of hours here to do. Coming up, it's time for our big 7 o'clock hour. We're going to kick things off with Terry Schilling of American Principles Project. Bit of a year in the review of all the top political stories and what we think the top narrative will be for a winning presidential campaign in 2024. Plus, KT McFarland on the border, on Ukraine, on Israel, on whatever we want. It's O'Connor and Company, Larry and Julie at 7 o'clock.